Yes, you can go, Kinjal.
Yeah. Hi, welcome everybody watching us or listening to us live on YouTube. We are back with our final session for today. We have students and TAs from Masters in Architectural History and Theory who are going to be giving a virtual tour of their program slash studio and a couple of projects. I'll hand over the mic to Deepti to take it over. Deepti, over to you.
Thank you, Kinjal. I'll share my screen right now. Yeah, so in order to reach the online exhibition page, whoever's listening can log on to exhibition.sep.ac.in/WE20. And from there, you enter the website and go to this page where you can choose studio because we are looking at a certain studio's work. And from there, we have come to AHT Foundation Studio, which I'll be introducing, and then semester 3 will be taken over by Ashwata. The first semester Foundation Studio of AHT program intends to instill in students core skills that are necessary to identify and analyze architectural cues that help them understand transformation, while also being able to connect larger transformative forces or events in history to the evident shifts around neighborhoods. Aligning with this goal, the past semester, 11 students from all over India have, from within the comfort of their homes, explored one such neighborhood called Panjrapol in the walled city of Ahmedabad. This experience was completely new, exciting, and incredibly challenging at the same time to be able to map out architectural transformation of a neighborhood based on online resources alone. And so this opportunity was used to introduce students to digital methods of research in architectural history and to really explore the question of what can be found from available resources if it was truly impossible to collect new primary data. Accordingly, the studio was organized in 3 modules, which broadly covered advanced architectural and visual documentation strategies, the analysis of archival material on topics such as spatial configuration, building typology, materiality, and aesthetics, along with developing the discipline of journaling, observations, and inferences. And towards the end of the semester, the students explored constructing an argument using text and visual material. So, in the first module, titled Survey and Documentation of Historic Lived Sites, the students engaged with various archival resources ranging from maps of the city at different periods of time to a memoir by a resident who lived in the neighborhood. They also experimented with different modes of representation at the same time. And eventually, by the end of 8 weeks, they had deconstructed the entire neighborhood and had analyzed attributes of different building typologies and street character in the Panjrapur neighborhood. And alongside this module, they also developed a habit of reflective journaling, wherein they made weekly blog posts about drawing observations and inferences from different archival resources. And in this case, they were encouraged to look more at the differences from different knowledge and information extracted from varied visual modes of information about a place. Post this, in the second half of the semester, in the next 8 weeks, the third module was conducted, titled Constructing an Architectural Timeline, the intention of which was to make larger connections across bodies of work. The students developed a narrative of architectural transformation in the form of essays centered on one key attribute or a set of attributes of the neighborhood that they have tried to contextualize at different points in time based on resources like maps, old and new photographs, and other textual material. And then each of them arrived at very interesting attributes to center the narrative of transformation on, such as street character in some cases, ornamentation, water systems, etc., to name a few. Now we can look at this entire process through two of our students' projects. I'll hand over to Mallika, who will be taking over from now.
Thank you, Deepthi. I hope everybody can hear me. Good evening, everyone. I'm Malika from the first semester batch of MEHT 2020. and I'll be presenting a short sample of my work. As Deepthi has already spoken about or given a brief of the three modules that we did in this first semester, the first module, since it had the objective of honing basic skills of observations and visualization through a series of mapping exercises, these aided me in assessing my ability to observe, infer information, triangulate it with other sources to achieve accuracy, and be able to represent it. Here, I found doodling and Google Earth as particularly useful tools to navigate this particular module. Module 2 provided a little more freedom in terms of the choice of subject to study and analyze. This module guided me towards developing my ability to articulate my thoughts by way of evidences, reference readings, the blog posts, and the inputs that I received on them. For example, juxtaposing a plan and a section of the same structure brought forward how different media embed different forms of information and, when pieced together, provided a more holistic picture of the elements that make up a building or a house. The final essay in Module 3 was, in a way, a culmination of the exercises and learning from the previous two modules. Looking back, the mind mapping exercise was of particular interest and use to me since it helped me build intuitive connections and guided me towards my topic choices. Through a series of discussions with the tutors, there emerged the possibility of weaving questions of morphology, patronage, and management in the context of Panjara as a topic for my final essay. This was also a eureka moment for me, which opened up the possibility of investigating the relationship between Jain institutions with their patronage and management. The essay, titled Of Religion, Patronage and Urban Transformations, A Brief History of Panjara was an attempt at foregrounding the historicity of the Panjara institution within the medieval and colonial fabric of the city, vis-a-vis historical evidences like maps and property records, as well as tracing its morphology in the 20th century via the processes of urban transformations. The research concluded with an understanding of the linkages between religion and neighborhood configurations, their dynamism and fluidity, and how exiting institutions leave their traces through place names, which then become containers of memory and urban transformations. Thank you.
Thank you, Malika. Now, Yaqeen will go through his project in a few minutes.
Good evening. I'm Yaqeen, and today I'll be briefing about the work accomplished throughout the semester. As the semester was conducted online, the site of Panjraport neighborhood was decoded through available resources. Analyzing and conjecturing the data in this first module helped me to understand the transformations in the residential typology, institutional typologies, and street patterns. In the second module, we uncovered modes of data representation such as texts, drawings, and elements. This led to a development in critically analyzing data. The intention of the third module was to derive an essay from the study. In the first phase, a number of mind maps were made. These offered a plethora of questions pertaining to the site. Further investigation and frequent discussions helped me to narrow down on a topic. One of the most integral source of data to comprehend the transformation of the Panjraport neighborhood are the maps. The three maps, the survey maps from 1881 and 1940 and a current satellite image of 2020 tell the tale of how a medieval neighborhood was transformed. The exercise chronicles the modernization of the medieval walled city of Ahmedabad in the late 18th and early to mid 19th century through the lens of the neighborhood. Tracing the morphology, networks, and the urban fabric of the neighborhood brought to light the connecting threads between sociology and built form. Firstly, I was able to observe the changes in the dynamics of street patterns and access. The extension and introduction of a new road coincided with the developments of the adjacent plots. Secondly, the transformations which the land of Panjrapur Animal Shelter underwent were seen as an example of densification and changing land use. Thirdly, patterns of development in the residential plots of Panjrapur were investigated to reveal how the character of the port changed. And lastly, architectural elements of continuity and their changing context were looked at through the examples of the Ordi and the Chabutro. The essay concluded that medieval neighborhoods are not static. The evidence suggests how native forms of modernity developed, or as Jyoti Hosagarkar calls it, indigenous modernities. These are indicators of reconfiguration that retained some aspects, altered some, and added some, which together forms an image which may seem to be an oddity. Today, as these neighborhoods and cities continue to live and be lived in, they form an integral component of understanding subdued local voices, interpretations, and expressions of modernity. Thank you.
Thank you, Yakin. Now Ashwata will take over. She was the teaching associate for semester 3 of AHT program. Ashwata, you can take over.
Yeah, hi. Hello everyone, good evening. So I'll be quickly running you through the third semester studio work of the AHT program over here, which was called Architecture by History, which was conducted by Professor Sonal Mittal and assisted by me. I'll just share the screen. So I'm guessing you all are able to see my screen right now. So I think I don't need to run you through this again. So this is the portal as you're aware of already. And as you select the option of the studio option over here, you'll be able to access the PG projects over here and under L4 Studio. So I'll directly skip to the studio introduction page. So to give you a brief over here, the studio that was conducted through 3 main modules. Over here, it mainly offers an opportunity to contest the dominant narratives of formalism in architectural history and to position history and criticism as an active component of contemporary architectural practice. The history of architecture has more often than not been relegated to its formalist format, and lessons from history translate to stylistic emulations in architecture. This course shatters the constricted viewpoint and expands the application of historiography to include spatial concerns of materialism, technology, post-humanism, reappropriation, erasures, identity, sexual orientations, economics, etc. So we are doing this by taking the case of the city of Calcutta, which has very rich archival material. And the studio creates that body of critical knowledge so as to inform subsequent architectural forms for present-day life project. And there's emphasis on the formal production of architecture substantiated by critical perspective on the architectural history, both archival material of the city. So So this is the first module which we worked with. And this module was mainly about working with the archival evidence. And the main aim was to create the palimpsest map, that is looking at the layered history of Calcutta. So over here, they did a lot, all the students did a lot of rigorous research by going through these archives, such as the maps and several journals, newspaper cuttings, paintings, photographs. All these archival data were collated together in the form of these palimpsestic maps, which were of the 16:9 screen ratio, which illustrated the layered history of Calcutta from a critical historiographical position. And the maps represent a range of scales from city to neighborhood to the building footprint. And the maps collate all these data together with the discursive commentary. They've been evaluated with the clarity of the argument and how they worked with the archival evidence as such. The second part of the module involved the students to create the essay, which was like a continuation of the first itself, where they further elaborated on their discursive position that they were working with. I'll just move on to this. So what you want to do while going through this material over here is these maps are extremely rich with all this data. So you would want to like really pause at take out these maps separately and have a really good look at them. Which have been created to the full screen size over here, the 16:9 ratio. So this is, moving to the second module, the cultural and theoretical analysis of spatial typology in Calcutta. So this particular segment investigates the built typology of Calcutta in early and mid 20th century. For example, garden houses, cabin restaurants, misparis, etc. These were investigated by accessing various written and archival sources to generate a base drawing of a typical built form. As part of spatial analysis, students construct the stereotypical built form, exaggerate it from a period drama for the cultural theoretical lens. That way, the studio has used set design as a strategy to engage with the architectural analysis over here. So this has been done because of the inability to directly access the site due to the pandemic. And all our studies are based on secondary sources. So the main focus is architectural analysis from cultural theoretical lens, such as simulacra, gaze, consumption, and production, representational, geopolitical, temporal contextualization, etc. Now, in this module, illustrations have been a significant part in their ability to communicate the architectural analysis and the discipline of referencing. And so they did this by creating a reference board where they put in all the data that they have collected. And then there is the layout, which contextualizes this visual that they are going to be creating. And then comes the analytical drawing, which elaborates further on the spatial typology that they worked with and that they're working with. So yeah, as you can see, I've just some of the students' work over here. Yeah, moving to the third module over here. So this was mainly content creation for the Bengal Partition Museum in Calcutta. And the module, it explores the politics of memory over here, and where the architecture and content become a tool to satisfy a political history with an agenda of memorializing. Intent here is to develop a method to evaluate archival, curatorial, and oral evidences of a political event, such as a partition. The museum is imagined as a futuristic venue of an immersive urban engagement to critically access this partition history and make it available for the larger citizenship. And so the students produce content and purpose its representation format, keeping the specificity of the architecture of the museum. And for each student works with the design, which was produced by the previous spring semester. So it was basically a continuation of that particular project that had already being conducted in the AD program last semester. So over here, again, the outcomes, it consisted of the reference. There was again, the discipline of reference was given emphasis. Then the curatorial note that they were working with, and the placement of the content that they have created, and then their illustrations, an elaborate version of that. So what I'll do right now is I'll just continue sharing the screen, and I've just invited a few students so that they can quickly run through their projects and you can have a good look at that. Is Ashwini on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. Ashwini, I'll just be scrolling down. Just let me know if I need to pause.
I'll just give you the module change so you can.
Yeah, sure. All right.
Okay, thank you. Good evening all, I'm Ashwini and I'll briefly walk you through my projects. So the three modules explore three key aspects of Bengal partition. One, history, you can go to the next slide. The history of Calcutta during 19th century. Second, the building typology typical to bourgeois English lifestyle of the city during 1930s. And the third, that is the Bengal partition by analyzing Radcliffe Line. By taking identity as the central historiographical position, the palimpsest map explores life around the jute industry. The second module explores movies, impressionist paintings, and archival readings as tool to analyze the typical English house in the city, while the third module dwells on the details of Radcliffe Line to create curatorial content beyond state narratives. Moving to the first module, the project Calcutta as Palimpsest for Identity and Memory explores the industrial development in the city. The map represents three distinct projects where I specifically focus on the jute industry. The analysis of archival maps and documents bring together associated events in different periods and places all together on three palimpsest map.
The first map, that is the river map, traces the development of jute industry and residential areas surrounding the mills to understand the importance of Hooghly River. You can move to the next slide. In this map, through these four river maps, what we have tried to do is we have tried to chronologically understand how the industrial growth has been in the city from 1750 till 1950. Moving to the second map deconstructs the nature of two emerging classes in the jute industry, that is the proletariat and bourgeois. The clashes, the coexistence, and the socio-political aspects between the two classes become the focus in this map. So in this map, on the left-hand side top corner is basically a collage explaining the bourgeois and proletariat nature of the jute industry, while the other two illustrations explain the development of gun industry and the Great Calcutta Killing. Moving to the next slide. So you can see in this, so this is like the third map, which is going in detail of the specific events, which in its acknowledgement of the nature of conflicts, strikes, protests, and class differences on the previous palimpsest, associate these spaces with identity, memory, operation, power display, erasure, and contestation. The sites illustrate a specific event at particular time in history of Calcutta post 1750. As we can see on the left corner, the legend color codes every side depending on the nature of the event that occurred. The circles on the map detail out these events in the process connects the three distinct projects. The color codes of the nature of these events follow the legend on the left. And on the right-hand side, we consolidated the events under the timeline in chronological order. In summation, by combining multiple events between 1750 and 1950, the palimpsest map illustrate various aspects of industries, that is the gun industry, jute industry, and the cremation in the city, to represent a larger picture of identity and memory of the colonial Calcutta. By creating argument from these palimpsest map, I further investigated this industrial classes of jute industry in a detailed essay where the maps help to develop the argument. Moving to the module 2, which focuses on the spatial analysis of typical bourgeois house of a jute merchant. By curating the stereotypical objects and spaces, the comment on the idea, it comments on the idea of luxury and grandeur, which is nothing but just the exhibition of ornaments in the house. The furniture and the ornamentation symbolizes lifestyle and which is detached from the purpose of its usage. The layout of the house is designed by studying different pieces of evidences which are taken from different sources of movie River, which was directed in 1951, the Impressionist paintings, and the archival drawings of typical English house of Calcutta in 1930s. So these two sections basically represent two distinct spaces in the house, which was part of a set design project that we did in the second module. Finally, coming to the third module, the project Shadowline focuses on the content curation for Partition Museum. The museum is curated by contesting the idea of border and segregation in the context of Bengal partition. By exploring landscape, everyday experiences, and struggle of borderlands, the curated content slowly unfolds how the Radcliffe line was blurred and porous during the initial years after its demarcation. You can go to the next slide. Exploring beyond the state narrative, I attempt to critically analyze the partition through three exhibitions. One, the surgical cut, where I explore the physical nature of border and multi-layer socio-political influences during its creation. Along with curatorial content, I also tried to design installations by tracing various proposals of Radcliffe's line that were contested against each other by various political parties. The second exhibition collects various stories of borderlands and give voices to the struggles of locals and migrants along the line during the 1947 partition. While the third section focuses on the participatory exhibition for the visitors to voice their opinions, stories, and experiences. By analyzing the archival material and creating curatorial content for the museum with installations, the project Shadowlines tried to question the rigid nature of the borders. And through all these modules, all these modules pushed us to critically investigate the archival material, which was specifically focusing on the city of Calcutta and Bengal partition. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashwini. I'll just move on to Ruchika.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, you can start.
All right. So thank you, Ashwini and Ashwita. Good evening to everybody watching. Ashwita and Ashwini have already set the ground for the studio projects. So I'll take a few moments to run us through the work that I produced as a part of the group projects. So for module 1, the first module that entailed making palimpsest maps was approached by mapping the production and consumption of various commodities in colonial Calcutta, as well as studying the various typologies available across the city. The commentary for my work with Aftab Lokhandwala, Isha Choksey, and Reshma Thomas reads as follows. In colonial India, as the aspirations of the Europeans grew, so did those of the Indian folk. The act of consuming the same or the next best commodities after the British, in every sense, was a powerful in the Bhadralok or the local elites' attempts to write the historical narratives of Calcutta to glorify themselves as being the immediate next in line of elitism only after their colonial masters. In the same landscape, the Bhadra Mahila also emerged, breaking notions of caste, class, and space, asserting the female identity, maneuvering through knowledge. Via this project, we sought to highlight the thoroughly monopolized consumption of alcohols, the interaction between the colonizer and the colonized in hotels and clubs, and the exclusivity of the mesbaris. The curious consumption of public women, both Indian and European, and the innovation that female education developed as between the 19th and the 20th century, all together contributing to show the various classes of society existing in Calcutta. Therefore, this project situated itself in the domain of identity histories and demonstrated the attempts of the Bhadralok to position themselves at the center of the consumption chain. The typology map highlights the varied styles of architecture seen in Calcutta, spanning the colonial garden houses, hotels, clubs, and Victorian cottages to the more Indianized courtyard houses. Via these typologies, commentary has been made on the public and the private nature of these buildings, while simultaneously observing the notions of gaze, visibility, and hiding. An interesting typology also seen in the form of the apothecary, which, in spite of being a space where medical drugs were sold, became a place for Bengali middle class babus to have clandestine drinking parties while simultaneously observing the notions of gaze, visibility, and hiding over and over again. Then, with the second module, the idea was to design a set, and I worked in a group again with Meen Purohit and Geetu Gangadhar. And what we designed this time was a set based in Chinatown. The project was called The Kitsch of Chinatown, Chinapara of Kolkata. Since the idea was to show the experiences of the street in a set design via simulacra, all our interior spaces were deliberately hidden from direct view. If you take a look at the screen, you will be able to see that there's a stretch of a street, and there's a few buildings here that you can look inside, and there's a few that you can only observe from the outside. So we were commenting specifically on the 2D nature of the street elevations and the visibility and hiding thereof. This set, therefore, is an example of an exercise in presenting the story of memories through an architectural lens. The streetscape showcases the various typologies as seen on the streets of Chinatown. Although the street is fictional, our memories are very real. Whether the insides of these typologies are accessible or not and visible or not depended upon the nature of the space. If it was a more private space, like a residence, it was placed out of accessibility, that is on the top floor. And if it were a more accessible space, it transformed into a public space, such as a pharmacy or the temple, the adda, where the people sit and drink chai and often play mahjong. This is a culture specific to Calcutta. Hence, this set was presented as a memory of a street scene beginning at the entrance of Chinatown, panning the entire street area, all the while engrossing the passers-by with the wonders of a kitschy Indo-Chinese settlement. Through this type of representation and in turn the analysis of the structures through the elevations, we tried to manifest the concept of profound reality of Chinatown. This profound reality that I keep reiterating to inculcated a feeling of experience in the space in its realist form every time we revisit it in our memories. By virtue of cherry picking the most desirable, the most stereotypical, and the most aesthetically captivating, we managed to create a picture of the Chinapara as we remember it. For the third module, we designed installations for the Bengal Partition Museum. We call our project The Politics of Memory, the Dead, the Undead, and the Women. And this again was done with Meen Purohit and Geetu Gangadhar. This project was tied together in 3 different parts. The first one was Geetu's part, in which he was talking about the rupture or the Ratcliffe line. Mean was talking about killings and riots, specifically focusing on the Great Calcutta killings. And I was talking about narratives of women, but not looking at them in a negative light, more like breaking away from the victim narratives and looking at narratives of empowerment. So what was being documented was refugee struggles, refugee women's stories of becoming, deaths in Calcutta riots, and refugee camps via narratives from newspaper articles, biographical accounts, blogs, books, both fiction and non-fiction, research papers, and formal documents. So there's 2 installations that I did as part of this project. The first is a tunnel. When you enter the tunnel, you look towards your left, and there's a line by Rabindranath Tagore that reads, that is from the poem Fireflies. So here, all through the project, we've been trying to use the motif of fireflies to represent women and to show how they found their way through the mist that was the partition. The next is this tunnel opened up into an open space, which is a journey of how women traversed through the whole partition thing. While they were first at home, they would then have to live in the refugee camps for a little while in conditions where they saw deaths around them and a lot of diseases. Then moving onwards, there were a lot of women who went on to become sole breadwinners for their family. They started working in matchstick factories, as weavers in cotton factories and lamp weaving factories. So this installation in an open space is a part of that women's journey. The last thing that we have come to is a consortium. We decided to have a space where people could come in and talk about their own experiences of the partition, if at all they remember them. So there is a memory project or a consortium in the end of the project, and that is how we conclude it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ruchika. I've also invited Fiona is over here.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. So you can quickly run through. Yeah. And then we'll be done with the session.
Yes. Can you go to the top of? Okay. So good evening. I'm Fiona. My classmates and Ashwita have briefed you enough about the process through the semester about collecting archival materials. Similarly, in the similar manner, here the attempt in the first module, the attempt was to exhibit the palimpsestic nature of Calcutta, and Calcutta is a palimpsest with several temporal and sensorial events that overtone each other in the city's canvas. So upon reading about the city, I've never been to Calcutta, but upon reading about the city and city's archives through maps, one question that kept coming back was the archives are do represent a perspective of a certain group. So whose tone are we reading the archives from? And this search led me through the first module, and the first module entirely was a process of exploration to the bourgeois of the colonial and post-colonial Calcutta. So this map exhibits the likes, dislikes, and aspirations that came from colonial and transformed the post-colonial fabric of the city. And this map also shows the green parts are perceptual layers of the city itself, and similarly the bottom part is the Chaurangi. You can go to the next map. So the Chaurangi area, which is the posh bourgeois community, which is juxtaposed against the entire fabric of the city. The data on either side are collected from various archives like British archives and maps and books. I largely laid my study on Swati Chattopadhyay's representing Calcutta. Here it shows how the housing community itself adopted aspirationally the colonial ideals in planning and in setting of the same. Moving on, so to the second module, Here in this module, it was a continued search of the bourgeois character and what they would keep in their house, what kind of items that went into the living room, the current drawing room of the place, then Baitakana. And this Baitakana is a typical representation of a son born to a rich father and who is educated and politically inclined. So the data for the same were collected from texts, archival material, and movies such as Charulata and Chokar Bali. Moving on to the third module. So this module is curating the content curation for Partition Museum. So here again, the idea of a person, of a family moving from the Bangladesh border to Kolkata, alien land. So that was explored through the eyes of the experiential lens of a domestic woman. Her emotional perspective is explored through the same, because the question was what to memorialize and why to memorialize and how to memorialize. So what was not memorialized enough was the voice of a woman through the partition. So moving forward for this partition project, the premise was largely laid on written material by women about women in partition, in Bengal partition, and the word wheel here is the key words mentioned in those scholarly articles and written text with amplified through the font size with respect to the number of times they were mentioned. This sets the larger premise of the museum, and the space itself was acquired from Rashita Sudhir's previous museum, who also focused largely on the nostalgia of home through the designing of her spaces. In doing justice to that, I have designed 4 installations, which then take material from this word wheel itself. Yeah. So the first installation is a visual installation where you walk through the font sizes, through the keywords, doubly amplified in the frequency that they appear and in the font size. And moving on to the second installation is an auditory installation where the visitor puts their ear against the sound panel and listens to the voice of a story narrated by a woman in partition in rebuilding her house or thematically separated along the open air theatre. Moving on to the third installation. This is a rather installation of a touch where the visitors are engaging in touching the items that have crossed borders that people usually keep in their homes. Here they also, the visitors who have been through partition record their own stories inside the bottle, which can be then later added to the soundboard itself. So this was the third installation. And walking out of the museum and the final installation, they pass through this library, which is a game book library where there are touch screen LED panels which has a curated narrative of women in partition that take you through different reading materials by different authors, which the visitor itself can navigate through a play with keywords. So this was my entire project through the semester. Thank you so much for giving me.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Ruchika and Ashwini also. Thank you, Kinjal and Hemant. You've done a really nice job with the exhibition.
Thank you, Dipti. Thank you, Ashwata. And thank you, everybody, for sharing your project. It was a wonderful session indeed. We want all the participants, all our viewers to log into the exhibition website and take a look in depth of the project. Bye-bye. See ya. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.